7 times the lights went out, the tracks glitched, the stage itself seemed to conspire against them, and 7 times these idols turned near catastrophe into pure magic. This isn't just about talent, it's about instinct, chemistry, and grace under pressure. What happens when the music stops, but 60,000 eyes are still watching? Who steps up when there's no time to think, only to react? Get ready, because number 3 broke armies completely, and by the time we reach number 1, you'll understand why these boys are legends beyond the songs.
Number 7. Jimin, the silent storm that turned a falling mic into a fairy tale moment. Picture this. The arena is roaring, sweat and lights and thousands of armies screaming his name. And then it happens. The kind of moment that makes a live performance either legendary or a disaster forever burned into fan compilations. Jimin's in-ear monitor cuts out mid-chorus. The track keeps rolling like it doesn't care, and for a split second you can see it in his eyes, that flash of panic every performer knows, the one where the whole world seems to tilt just slightly off its axis. But here's the thing about Jimin, and this is something choreographers and vocal coaches have said about him for years. His training isn't just muscle memory, it's instinct, built from a decade of discipline, starting back when he was a teenager training relentlessly at Busan High School of Arts before Big Hit even signed him. That instinct kicked in instantly. Instead of stopping, instead of letting confusion show, he leaned harder into the choreography, syncing his movements so precisely with the beat that even without hearing his own vocals clearly, he kept the emotional through line of the performance completely intact. Fans in the front rows later said in interviews and fan cams that you could see his mouth forming the lyrics with even more intensity than usual, like he was pouring everything he had into compensating for what technology had failed to deliver. That's the part that gets you, isn't it? The idea that behind the polished, otherworldly performances we see is a person quietly problem-solving in real time, refusing to let an audience feel even a hint of the chaos happening backstage or in his own ears. And then there's the physical side of it too. Anyone who has studied Jimin's dance history knows he doesn't just perform choreography, he interprets it, bends it, makes it breathe with his own emotional register, something he's spoken about in documentaries like Burn the Stage and Bring the Soul, where he talks about wanting every movement to feel like storytelling rather than repetition. In that malfunction moment, that philosophy became his safety net. He didn't need the perfect audio feed to know where the emotional peak of the song was supposed to land, because he'd internalized it long before he ever stepped on that stage. Backup dancers reportedly said afterward that they took cues from his body language alone to stay in formation, essentially letting him become the anchor for the entire ensemble during those chaotic seconds. Think about the pressure that puts on one person in front of a stadium-sized crowd with a broken feed in his ear and only his own trained body as a guide, and still delivering a performance so seamless that most casual viewers watching the broadcast at home had no idea anything had gone wrong at all. It wasn't until fan accounts, backstage crew interviews, and slowed-down footage started circulating that the full picture came together, and that's when the story exploded across fan communities, because suddenly everyone realized they had just watched a masterclass in composure without even knowing it. There's also an emotional layer here that ARMYs connect with deeply, because Jimin has always been open about his anxieties, his perfectionism, the pressure he puts on himself to never let the group or the fans down. He's talked before about sleepless nights before big shows, about pushing his body past exhaustion just to make sure a performance feels right. So imagining him in that exact moment, facing a technical failure that could have derailed the entire number, and choosing instead to trust years of muscle memory and heart over panic, it hits different. It's not just a cool save, it's a window into who he is as a performer and as a person, someone who has built resilience out of relentless self-discipline, someone who refuses to let an audience see him crack, even when everything backstage might be falling apart. And that's exactly why this moment made it onto our list, because it wasn't flashy, it wasn't a big dramatic gesture, it was quiet,
controlled, almost invisible mastery, the kind of save that only reveals its brilliance once you know what was actually happening underneath the surface. It's the difference between an idol and an artist, the difference between performing a song and living in it. And Jimin, in that one fractured, chaotic second, proved exactly why he's considered one of the most technically precise and emotionally intuitive performers in the entire industry. So next time you watch that fan cam, look closer, because what looks like just another flawless Jimin performance was actually a masterclass in grace under pressure, a save so smooth that most of the world never even knew there was a disaster to begin with. And if that's what number 7 looks like, just wait until you see what's coming next, because the stakes only get higher from here, and the emotions only get rawer.
Number 6. Jungkook, the golden maknae who turned a costume malfunction into an unshakable display of power. There's a reason ARMYs call Jungkook the golden maknae, and it's not just because he can sing, dance, produce, and basically do everything with terrifying ease. It's because when things go sideways, he doesn't just recover. He transforms the mistake into something that somehow makes the performance even more iconic. This particular moment happened during a high-energy number, one of those explosive stage productions where the choreography demands sharp, aggressive movement, quick formation changes, and total physical commitment. The kind of performance where one loose thread can turn into a genuine wardrobe crisis in seconds. And that's exactly what happened. Mid-performance, a part of his outfit, specifically a strap on his stage jacket, came undone during a rapid spin sequence, the kind of movement that's already risky even when everything is secure. For most performers, this is the nightmare scenario, the moment where you either awkwardly fumble to fix it on camera, break formation to signal for help, or worse, let it visibly affect your confidence for the rest of the song. Jungkook did none of that. Instead, in a moment that fan cam analysts and dance critics still talk about, he adjusted the fabric with one hand mid-movement, completing the transition into the next formation without missing a single beat, all while maintaining the exact facial expression and intensity the choreography demanded. If you slow down the footage frame by frame, and believe me, fans have, you can see the split second where his hand moves to fix the strap, but his lower body never breaks stride. His footwork stays locked into the counts, and his expression doesn't flicker even slightly out of character. This is where his background becomes so relevant, because Jungkook trained not just as a vocalist, but extensively in dance under some of the industry's most demanding instructors, absorbing techniques from hip-hop, contemporary, and even street-style choreography from a very young age. He's spoken in interviews and in his solo documentary content about how he obsesses over control, over making sure that even improvised elements of a performance look intentional, almost choreographed, because to him, sloppiness is the ultimate failure, not mistakes themselves. That mentality was on full display in this moment. It wasn't that he avoided a mistake. Plenty of performers experience wardrobe issues on stage. It's that he absorbed it into the performance so completely that most of the arena audience and even a huge portion of viewers at home had zero idea anything had gone wrong until close-up shots and slow-motion replays surfaced online afterward. What makes this moment even more special is the context surrounding it, because this particular era of performances came during a period when Jungkook was already carrying immense pressure, juggling group promotions with the beginning stages of solo projects, something he's openly discussed feeling anxious about, worried about balancing expectations from fans, from the industry, and from himself. Knowing that backdrop, imagining him dealing with a physical malfunction on top of all that mental load and still delivering a performance so controlled that fans initially praised the choreography's precision without realizing there had been a problem at all, that's the kind of detail that turns a simple stage moment into something almost mythic in fan culture. Backstage crew members have mentioned in behind-the-scenes footage how meticulous Jungkook is about costume checks, sometimes doing his own last-minute adjustments, even when stylists have already approved an outfit, precisely because he's aware how quickly something small can spiral into a visible problem during high-impact choreography. So when the very thing he tries to prevent actually happens live in front of thousands, and he handles it with such effortless control that it becomes something ARMYs
V's praise rather than pity. That says everything about his instincts as a performer. This moment also reignited online discussions comparing him to seasoned veteran performers decades older, with dance critics noting that the ability to problem solve physically without breaking character or energy is something usually only mastered after years of professional stage experience, something Jungkook has clearly absorbed despite being one of the youngest members. It's a small moment in the grand scale of BTS's massive catalog of performances, but it's a moment that reveals something huge. That behind the record-breaking numbers, the sold-out stadiums, and the global fame, there's a performer who treats every second on stage like it matters, who refuses to let even a wardrobe malfunction shake his execution, and who somehow makes crisis management look like just another part of the choreography. That's the golden maknae effect. That's why this moment deserves its place on this list. And that's exactly why number 5 is about to raise the emotional stakes even higher. Because if you thought this was impressive, wait until you see what happens when the stage itself literally starts working against them.
Number 5. V. The moment a sound system failure turned into a hauntingly beautiful acapella that silenced the entire arena. There are stage disasters that get fixed quietly, and then there are stage disasters that get transformed into something so unexpectedly beautiful that the mistake itself becomes the legend. And this moment with V falls firmly into the second category. It happened during one of those emotionally heavy ballad segments, the kind of song that relies entirely on atmosphere, on subtlety, on the audience being pulled into a quiet, almost fragile emotional space, which means any technical hiccup during a performance like this isn't just inconvenient, it's genuinely dangerous to the entire mood of the show. And that's exactly what happened when the backing track suddenly cut out completely. Not stuttered, not glitched, just gone, leaving V standing there with only the raw sound of the arena and his own voice as the only thing holding the moment together. For most performers, especially in a live setting with tens of thousands of people watching and broadcast cameras capturing every second, this is the kind of failure that triggers instant panic, because without the instrumental backing, every flaw in vocal control, every breath, every imperfect note becomes exposed instantly, with nowhere to hide. But V, known throughout the industry and among vocal coaches for his uniquely deep, resonant tone, something often compared to a baritone quality rare among idols his age, didn't flinch. Instead of stopping, instead of gesturing to the sound crew or breaking the emotional flow of the performance, he kept singing, a cappella, completely exposed, letting his voice fill the massive space entirely on its own. If you've ever heard vocal coaches or music critics analyze his tone, they often bring up his signature low register, the smoky, almost cinematic quality that makes his voice instantly recognizable. And in that unplanned a cappella moment, that exact quality became the star of the show. The arena, which seconds earlier had been filled with the layered sound of instrumental production, suddenly became eerily quiet except for his voice, carrying the melody with a rawness that instrumental backing usually smooths over. Fans in the audience have described the feeling as spine-chilling, the kind of silence where you could genuinely hear people holding their breath, because there was something almost sacred about hearing him completely unfiltered, without studio polish or instrumental support, just pure vocal presence filling a stadium-sized room. This moment also connects deeply to V's own personal journey as an artist, because he's spoken candidly in interviews and through his solo music about wanting his voice to feel like it carries weight, like it tells a story rather than just hits notes correctly. He's talked about influences ranging from jazz to soul music, about wanting his tone to feel textured and emotional rather than clean and mechanical. And in that failure moment, all of that philosophy came through instinctively without any time to prepare or plan. Sound engineers who commented anonymously on this incident later noted that most vocalists, even skilled ones, tend to either rush or hesitate when an instrumental track drops unexpectedly, because the loss of rhythmic anchor throws off pacing. But V maintained not just pitch, but also emotional pacing, letting pauses breathe naturally, letting certain lines land with even more gravity than they might have with the original arrangement.
that kind of instinct doesn't come from luck. It comes from years of understanding not just how to sing, but how to interpret silence and space as part of a performance, something that takes most vocalists years, sometimes decades, to fully master. The other members, according to fan accounts and behind-the-scenes footage from that tour, later said they were stunned watching from the side of the stage, because instead of an awkward technical failure, what unfolded felt like an intentional, almost artistic moment, one that fits so naturally into the emotional arc of the song that many fans in the crowd initially assumed it was a planned acoustic segment. It wasn't until interviews and crew statements afterward confirmed the technical failure that the story spread across fan communities, sparking countless think pieces and reaction videos dissecting just how rare it is for a performer to turn total technical collapse into something so emotionally powerful that fans still call it one of the most beautiful unplanned moments in the group's live history. This incident also reflects something ARMYs have long appreciated about V specifically, his willingness to lean into vulnerability rather than hide from it, something visible not just in performances, but in his more introspective solo work and personal storytelling. When the safety net of production disappears entirely, most performers reach for control, but V reached for authenticity instead, letting the moment be raw rather than trying to mask the imperfection. And that choice, whether conscious or purely instinctual, is exactly what turned a technical disaster into one of the most emotionally resonant unplanned performances in BTS's history. It's the kind of moment that reminds everyone watching that live music, real live music, is unpredictable, fragile, and occasionally magical precisely because of that fragility. And V's response to that fragile moment is exactly why it earns its place here at number 5. But if you think a silent arena hanging on to one unshaken voice is powerful, wait until you see what happens next, because number 4 involves a moment where the stage floor itself became the enemy, and the response to that crisis left fans absolutely floored.
Number 4. Jin, the moment a slippery stage floor almost caused a fall, and how his reaction turned panic into pure charisma. Some disasters on stage are about sound, some are about costumes, but some are about the most basic, most terrifying variable of all: physical footing. And this is exactly what happened during one of Jin's performances, when the stage floor, slick from stage fog condensation and rapid choreography, nearly sent him sliding out of formation entirely. If you've ever watched behind-the-scenes footage of large-scale Kpop productions, you know that stage floors are treated with an almost obsessive level of caution, because fog machines, strobe lighting, and rapid formation changes create a genuinely hazardous environment, one where a single misstep can turn into a viral disaster clip, or worse, an actual injury. During this particular performance, a sudden shift in choreography required a quick pivot combined with a sharp step forward, and in that fraction of a second, Jin's foot caught the slick surface left behind by stage fog that hadn't fully dissipated. Anyone who has studied dance mechanics knows that a slip like this, especially mid-pivot, is one of the hardest recoveries to pull off cleanly, because your body's natural instinct is to overcorrect, which often leads to an even more visible stumble. But instead of overcorrecting or freezing, Jin did something that dance choreographers who later analyzed the clip described as remarkably composed. He absorbed the slip into a controlled crouch, turning what could have been an awkward, visible fall into something that looked almost like an intentional, stylistic beat drop, a brief, lowered stance that synced surprisingly well with the accent in the music at that exact moment. It's the kind of split-second physical improvisation that only works because of serious underlying training and body awareness, something Jin has talked about developing extensively over the years, especially given that he didn't come from as extensive a pre-debut dance background as some of the other members, and has been open about having to work incredibly hard to catch up, often practicing choreography repeatedly long after formal rehearsals had ended.
That backstory matters here because it means the recovery wasn't just muscle memory built from childhood dance training. It was the product of relentless personal effort, the kind of quiet grinding away at movement and control that doesn't always get spotlighted the way natural talent does. In the footage, you can see him rise back into formation almost immediately, resyncing with the choreography within a beat, and continuing with an expression so composed that many viewers watching live had no idea anything had gone wrong, until slow motion clips began circulating showing the visible slide mark left on the stage floor. What makes this moment resonate so deeply with fans isn't just the physical recovery, it's the emotional context surrounding it. Because Jin has spoken candidly, sometimes humorously and sometimes with real vulnerability, about feeling like he has to work twice as hard to keep up with members who trained in dance from a much younger age. About the internal pressure of representing the group at the highest level, even in categories he considers his personal weak points. So watching him not just recover from a genuinely dangerous slip, but do so with enough control that it looked deliberate, that hits different for fans who know how much invisible effort goes into moments like that. Members who were performing alongside him later admitted in interviews that they didn't notice the slip in real time either, because his recovery was fast enough and smooth enough to blend seamlessly into the choreography's natural rhythm. Choreographers and stage safety experts who commented on similar incidents in the industry have noted that this type of recovery, converting a slip into a stylized crouch rather than an awkward stumble, requires not just physical reflexes, but also serious spatial awareness under pressure, the kind of skill usually built through years of live performance experience across countless stages, weather conditions, and physical circumstances. And here's the emotional layer that ARMYs latched onto immediately once the story spread. This wasn't a small, low-stakes performance. This happened during a large-scale broadcast with millions watching, meaning any visible stumble could have instantly become a headline, a meme, a moment clipped endlessly out of context. Instead, because of his instinctive, controlled reaction, the story that spread afterward wasn't about a fall. It was about impressive stage presence, about a moment of danger turned into something that actually enhanced the performance's visual impact. It's a perfect example of something fans have said about Jin for years, that his stage presence, often underestimated compared to members considered more naturally gifted dancers, carries a kind of steady, reliable strength that becomes most visible exactly in these unscripted, high-pressure moments. This is the kind of save that doesn't get talked about as often as flashy vocal runs or dramatic choreography breaks, but it's arguably one of the most impressive because it involves literal physical danger, the kind of moment where one wrong reaction could have led to real injury, and instead became a masterclass in composure under genuinely risky circumstances. That's exactly why this moment deserved its spot here at number 4, a reminder that behind the polish and precision of every BTS performance, there's real physical risk, real effort, and real resilience keeping the show together, even when the stage floor itself becomes an unexpected enemy. But brace yourself, because number 3 is the moment that didn't just impress fans, it broke them emotionally. And once you hear what happened, you'll understand exactly why ARMYs still cry rewatching it.
Number 3. RM, the moment his voice cracked mid-speech, and why that broken moment made an entire stadium cry with him. Not every stage disaster is about choreography or sound systems. Sometimes the most devastating, most unforgettable moment comes from something far more human. And that's exactly what happened when RM, the leader who has spent years being the calm, articulate voice holding everything together, found his own composure completely shattering in front of tens of thousands of people, live, with no way to hide it.
This moment happened during an emotional segment of a concert, one of those interludes where members address the crowd directly, where scripted talking points usually give way to genuine, unfiltered feeling. And on this particular night, something about the crowd, the moment, the weight of everything the group had been through together hit RM harder than anyone expected. He started speaking, as he usually does, thoughtfully, trying to articulate gratitude toward armies, trying to put into words the strange, overwhelming reality of standing in front of that many people who have followed them through years of growth, criticism, exhaustion, and triumph. And midway through his sentence, his voice cracked. Not a small waver, not a quick recovery, but a genuine, visible break. The kind where you can see someone fighting back tears in real time, where the words physically catch in their throat because the emotion underneath them has become too big to control. For a leader who has always been known for his composure, his eloquence, his ability to speak fluently even in a second language during international interviews, this was an incredibly vulnerable moment, the kind of unscripted human crack that no amount of preparation can predict or control. What makes this moment so devastatingly powerful isn't just the crack itself, it's what happened immediately afterward, because instead of pushing through with forced composure or awkwardly laughing it off, RM paused, visibly gathered himself, and instead of hiding the emotion, he leaned into it, telling the crowd honestly that he was overwhelmed, that the moment had caught him off guard, that being on that stage with them meant more than he could properly put into words. That honesty, that refusal to mask what was happening is exactly what turned a personal moment of vulnerability into something the entire stadium experienced together. Fans in the crowd have described in numerous accounts how the energy of the entire arena shifted instantly, going from cheering excitement to a hushed, collectively emotional silence, then eventually into a wave of fans crying alongside him, not out of sadness, but out of shared, overwhelming connection. This is where RM's history becomes so relevant to understanding why this moment cuts so deep, because he has always been the member burdened with translating the group's inner world to the outside world, handling international press, carrying the responsibility of representing 7 very different personalities as one coherent voice, something he's openly discussed as exhausting, isolating at times, and mentally heavy, especially during earlier years when the group faced intense scrutiny and skepticism from the industry. Knowing that history, watching him break down not from criticism or hardship, but from pure gratitude, from the sheer emotional weight of realizing how far they'd come together with the people in front of him, that context transforms this moment from just a touching stage clip into something almost mythic in fan culture. Members standing near him on stage, according to accounts and fan cam footage, immediately reacted with visible concern and support, some placing a hand on his shoulder, others stepping subtly closer, a silent show of solidarity that fans picked up on instantly and discussed extensively afterward, because it revealed the deep, protective bond between the members that goes beyond choreography and performance. What's particularly striking is how this moment spread, not through official promotion or planned content, but organically through fan-uploaded clips, translated subtitles, and reaction videos, because the raw authenticity of it resonated across language barriers instantly, proving that genuine emotion doesn't need translation to hit hard. Psychologists and cultural commentators who've discussed parasocial relationships in fandoms have noted that moments like this, unscripted vulnerability from public figures who are usually composed and controlled, create incredibly powerful emotional bonds because they remind audiences that behind the polished performances and rehearsed choreography are real people carrying real emotional weight, real exhaustion, real love, holding it all together. That's exactly why this moment earns its powerful spot at number 3. And if you thought this hit hard, brace yourself, because number 2 involves a moment where the entire group had to step up together, and what happened next redefined what teamwork on stage really looks like. Number 2.
Suga, the moment a sudden equipment failure threatened to derail an entire song, and how his quick thinking rescued the whole group. There's a special kind of pressure that comes with being the one who has to think fastest when everything around you starts falling apart. And this is exactly the position Suga found himself in during a performance that could have unraveled into total chaos within seconds, if not for his sharp, almost instinctive leadership under pressure. This moment happened during a segment built around layered production, timed light cues, synchronized formations, and a backing track that relied heavily on precise timing between the instrumental and the choreography, the kind of performance where even a half-second delay can throw an entire number into visible disarray. Midway through, a technical failure occurred with the in-ear monitor system used by several members simultaneously, meaning multiple people lost their audio cue at nearly the same time, a scenario far more dangerous than a single performer losing sound, because it risked the entire group falling out of sync with each other in front of a massive live audience and broadcast cameras. This is the kind of moment that separates good performers from true leaders, because individual recovery is one thing, but recovering an entire group's synchronization in real time without any verbal communication possible over the blaring music requires an entirely different level of situational awareness. Suga, known throughout the group and industry for his sharp, analytical mind, something that comes through clearly in interviews where he discusses music production, business strategy, and even his own mental health journey with striking clarity and honesty, immediately shifted into what fans and choreographers later described as a kind of silent leadership mode. Rather than panicking or trying to fix his own performance individually, he began exaggerating specific movement cues, slightly emphasizing key transition points in the choreography just a beat early, essentially using his own body as a visual metronome for the other members, who were struggling to stay synced without their audio guide. If you watch the recovered footage closely, something dedicated fan analysts have done frame by frame, you can see him subtly leading formation changes, positioning himself in a way that other members could visually anchor to, effectively becoming a walking, moving cue system in real time, all without breaking his own vocal delivery or losing energy in his performance. This kind of quick, selfless problem-solving reflects something Suga has talked about extensively regarding his own artistic philosophy, the idea that the group's collective success always outweighs individual perfection, a mindset shaped partly by his years working as a producer and songwriter, where thinking about the bigger picture, the overall structure and flow, has always been more important to him than any single element. His background in production, something he's discussed at length, including his early years struggling as an underground rapper in Daegu before joining Big Hit, meant he approached this crisis almost like solving a mixing problem in real time, identifying the breakdown point and adjusting the overall structure instantly, rather than fixating on his own individual performance. Members who spoke about this incident afterward in behind-the-scenes content mentioned specifically noticing him giving quick, almost imperceptible glances and gestures, guiding them back into sync within just a few seconds, an incredibly short window that still felt like an eternity for those experiencing the technical failure live on stage. What makes this moment so significant isn't just the technical recovery, it's the leadership philosophy behind it. Because in a moment of total uncertainty, when multiple members were simultaneously losing their guide track, the instinct to think collectively rather than individually, protectively, is something that speaks volumes about the internal culture of the group. A culture built over years of surviving hardships together, from early financial struggles to intense public scrutiny, moments Suga has openly discussed as formative in shaping how deeply protective he feels over the group's collective well-being.
Fans who managed to piece together what actually happened, largely through multiple fan cam angles and eventually crew commentary, expressed something close to awe once they realized the scale of what had almost gone wrong and how seamlessly it had been averted, precisely because most casual viewers watching the broadcast had absolutely no idea a multi-member audio failure had even occurred. This incident sparked widespread discussion among fans and even industry commentators about the underrated skill of on-stage leadership, the ability to manage crises not through individual brilliance alone, but through quick, selfless coordination that keeps an entire team moving as one unit, even when the technical foundation supporting them completely disappears. It's a moment that reflects everything armies have come to associate with Suga specifically: his sharp mind, his calm exterior even under intense pressure, and his consistent, quiet prioritization of the group's collective success over his own personal spotlight. That's exactly why this moment earns its powerful place at number 2, a masterclass not just in individual skill, but in real-time leadership under crisis. And now, brace yourself, because number 1 isn't just about one member's quick thinking. It's about a moment so intense, so unexpected, that it changed how armies understood the true meaning of stage presence forever.
Number 1. J-Hope. The moment a complete power outage plunged the stage into darkness, and how he turned total blackout into the most legendary performance of the night. If every moment on this list has taught us anything, it's that true stage mastery reveals itself not in perfect conditions, but in absolute chaos. And nothing tested that more brutally than the night a complete power outage hit mid-performance, plunging the entire stage into sudden, total darkness, leaving J-Hope standing there with no lights, no visual cues, no safety net of any kind, just himself, the crowd, and whatever instinct he could pull from years of relentless training. This wasn't a flicker. This wasn't a partial glitch. This was a full blackout, the kind of nightmare scenario production teams train for constantly but hope never actually happens, especially during a high-energy, choreography-heavy segment where visual precision and lighting cues are usually tightly integrated into the performance's entire structure. For a few genuinely terrifying seconds, the massive venue went completely black, and in an ordinary situation, this is exactly the kind of moment that could cause a performer to freeze entirely, disoriented, unsure of positioning, worried about physical safety on a stage they can no longer see. But J-Hope, someone who has been described repeatedly by choreographers and industry professionals as one of the most technically gifted and endlessly hard-working dancers in the entire K-pop landscape, didn't freeze. He adapted instantly, relying purely on spatial memory built from what he's described in interviews as obsessive, almost excessive rehearsal habits, the kind where he maps out every single step, every rotation, every formation change so thoroughly that his body knows the choreography even without visual reference points. In the darkness, according to accounts from crew members and fellow performers who were present, he didn't just stand there waiting for lights to return. He kept moving, using sound alone, the rhythm of the music, and his own internal counting to maintain his choreography almost perfectly, trusting his training completely in a moment where trusting anything else simply wasn't possible. When the lights suddenly surged back on moments later, footage shows him landing precisely in formation, mid-movement, as if nothing had happened at all, an outcome that even seasoned professional dancers have called almost unbelievable given the circumstances. This moment becomes even more meaningful when you consider J-Hope's personal journey, someone who has spoken candidly about starting as an underdog within the group, about feeling like he had to fight incredibly hard early on just to secure his position, given intense competition among trainees, and doubts from some early evaluators about his vocal ability compared to his obviously exceptional dance skill. That underdog mentality, that refusal to ever let a weak spot become a liability, is precisely what fueled the kind of relentless, borderline perfectionist rehearsal habits that made this blackout recovery even possible.
He's talked about spending extra hours long after formal practice ended, refining transitions, obsessing over foot placement, treating choreography not as something to memorize, but as something to internalize so deeply it becomes instinctual, a philosophy that turned what should have been a terrifying malfunction into arguably the single most impressive recovery on this entire list. Fans who were present that night have described the experience almost like watching a magic trick unfold in real time. The shock of sudden darkness, the confusion rippling through the crowd, and then the collective gasp when lights returned to reveal him perfectly synced, as if the blackout had been nothing more than a dramatic staging choice, rather than a genuine technical catastrophe. Crew members later confirmed it was indeed a full, unplanned power failure, sparking widespread online discussion once footage and behind-the-scenes commentary started circulating, with dance critics and fellow industry professionals expressing genuine astonishment that anyone could maintain that level of precision purely through internalized rhythm and spatial memory with zero visual reference. This moment also resonated so deeply with ARMYs because it symbolizes something bigger about J-Hope's entire career arc: the constant, quiet grinding, the refusal to let outside doubt or unpredictable circumstances derail his performance, the deep, almost spiritual trust in his own preparation. It wasn't flashy in the way a dramatic vocal save might be. It wasn't emotional in the way a tearful speech would be. But in terms of pure technical mastery under the extreme, unpredictable circumstances imaginable, nothing else on this list compares to performing an entire choreography sequence in complete darkness in front of tens of thousands of people and landing it flawlessly. That's exactly why this moment earns the top spot, a perfect closing statement for everything this list has been building toward, that behind the polished stages, the sold-out arenas, and the record-breaking global success, these are performers who have trained themselves to survive literally anything: technical failures, physical danger, emotional overwhelm, and even total darkness, always finding a way to turn crisis into something unforgettable. 7 moments, 7 different kinds of pressure, and 7 reminders of why this group's connection with ARMYs runs so much deeper than just music. It's built on trust, resilience, and the kind of quiet, relentless dedication that turns even the worst possible disaster into a legendary story fans will keep retelling for years to come.